Welcome back, 5011 fam. How y'all is?
Listen, y'all.
Yes,
We
here we
working on
are.
it.
We're working on
Unless
it,
y'all want to
y'all.
hear me, y'all keep wanting to hear me sing. If y'all want to hear me sing, let me know in the comments because I can
I mean,
always,
period. Why not?
sing a tune. But I thought,
Period.
say we might hit the switchboards for y'all, let y'all know we coming in with coming in hot with a little something new.
Coming in hot. I mean, y'all see us. Here we are with a video. We are really getting into the video form of our podcast. It's something we've been wanting to work on for a long time. So, as y'all know, if y'all can see now,
As you can
Jay,
see, I'm DiDi.
DD. We're here doing what we do at the 5011 Chronicles, y'all, which is having conversations that spark conversation. We're
Yes.
celebrating Black History Month, as we have been all month, as we're going to continue to do all year, all lifelong. And this episode is really exciting because we're going to start talking about Black activism. And we started
Yes.
teasing it a little bit in the past episode. We talked about that connection between artistry and activism has always been there. So we're going to get into some of that as well. But this episode is all about activism. So we thank y'all so much for tuning into another episode of the 5011 Chronicles. Y'all, we're about to get into this thing. Let's do
Period. Period. I'm obsessed with this.
Just
Yeah.
love it. So, Black activism. I mean,
Yes.
like, I honestly, I feel like that's one of the words that when you look at the diaspora, when you specifically look at African Americans,
Mm-hmm.
you can't talk about the African American journey in this country and not talk about activism. There's no
Yes.
way that conversation can't come up. And I think you and I talked about this. So many people know the Martin Luther Kings
And
and
Malcolm
the
X.
the Malcolm X's and the Rosa Parks. And so we hear those names a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that they're overused because they're not. I honestly feel like they're still not talked about enough, but they are heard more than the other names that
Mm-hmm.
do a lot with activism,
And there
that do a
was so
lot with
much going on.
so many. And they're a very specific part of time. Like they're a very short period of time in which Black people have been active in activism specifically. So
Mm-hmm.
we were thinking that this episode could be about so many more of those voices, so many
Yeah,
more of those activists who came forward and made changes and made moves and really kind of brought us to where we are in this current day. Um,
absolutely.
I mean, and I think like we talked a little bit about Bayard Rustin in the last episode with Coleman
Yeah, because
Domingo
you
playing
watched
him.
it, right?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
so good. And
I
it
still
was
haven't
so
seen it yet.
good because it also had the nuanced aspects of his existence.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just to review, Bayard Rustin was a major figure when it comes to organizing the March on Washington for jobs and for freedoms and equality. It was a huge deal. The biggest
Yes.
parts of that came with Mahalia Jackson singing and Martin Luther King giving
The
the I have
queen of
the
gospel.
famous, yes, the queen, the mother of gospel, Mahalia Jackson. But also like one of the fathers of the modern civil rights age,
Yes.
Martin Luther King Jr. gave that iconic I Have a Dream speech and talked about what his dream looks like for us as a people in relation to each other in
Mm-hmm.
America. So Black people, white people, brown people, all walks of life, all classes, all social aspects, like how we can ingratiate, how we can
Mm-hmm.
integrate for real. Um,
Did your
but I
school do
don't,
the essay, the Dr. King essay every year?
yes.
Okay. I just wanted.
What
I
does the
didn't know
speech
if
mean
that
to
was
you?
like a global thing that
You know
people
about
did.
the what the I Have a Dream speech means to you type of
Yeah.
essay? Yeah.
Yeah.
We did it. We did it. That was Black history in a lot of my education in public schooling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was in private school, I honestly don't remember us talking about like Black history. We could have, but I really don't. There were four
Yeah.
Black people in the whole school, so I really don't think we were talking about Black history. We were
And
the
see,
Black history.
my elementary school was a global education school, so it would be like a big thing of
Hmm.
like Black history because I mean, everything from like I don't know if you remember a Nazi the Spider, but like
Yes,
I'm talking about
Nazi.
from a Nazi the Spider all the way to Doctor. Like that's one of the things I was blessed with of going to a global education school is like I actually got to learn some of my history and not
Hmm.
just Dr. King.
Yes. So what I think is really cool about Bayard Rustin is having a man who during the 60s was relatively openly gay. which was definitely against the super conservative movement that was the civil rights movement. He was very much unappreciated in a lot of underappreciated as well as unappreciated in a lot of senses. And the movie, the biopic, or what do people call it? The biopic, because I really hate hearing people say
better.
I like it so much better. I like it so much better. And I think we talked about in a previous episode that biopics are like the Michael Jackson movie that had that white man, that had that other man play him. That's a biopic. I mean, that's a biopic,
That's
and then
a
a biopic is like, biopic is like, what's love got to do with it? You know, like
Period.
there's a difference. You know, there's levels,
Yes,
levels to these biographies.
Period.
But this was a true biopic, and what I loved not only was Coleman Domingo's performance, but again the nuances about what it was like for Rustin in this culture of conservative blackness, where there were many times people would make comments to Dr. King, letting him know, hey, it's probably not good to have Rustin around you because people think y'all are in a relationship, which people weren't really thinking that. But because they were friends, Dr. King had to be aware of the optics, you know, like he had to be aware of how things look. It's wild. It's wild.
Like, the focus should be like, hello, we're talking about the fact that like black people don't have rights. Like, hello, let's stay on topic here.
But instead it's always been optics. And I think that's actually a sad aspect of it, because if you look at a lot of our activism, optics has been a big part of it. Black people are very judged on how we show up, how we appear, how we present, especially when it comes to things that we're passionate about. So Bayard Rustin is, to me, someone who I think is one of the unsung heroes who is finally getting some type of spotlight on his work and on his legacy. Yeah, but there's so many more. I mean, there's so many more. Like and I know you've got several, because when I tell y'all.
Yeah, I actually, because if you want, what you're talking about is kind of similar to an extent. It wasn't necessarily focused on LGBTQ, but what W.E.B. Du Bois was kind of talking about was like, listen, we shouldn't have to conform. He kind of strayed away from like what the Booker T. Washingtons and those people were saying of like, oh, we got to get in to fit in. He like, no, like I should be able to show up authentically me, whoever, as African as I want to be, as African American as I want to be, whatever that looks like for me, and still be accepted. It shouldn't matter what kind of hair I got, what I got on, what I'm doing behind closed doors when you're not even there and you have no idea. Like, none of that should matter. And I kind of wanted to get your perspective on it, because we've both worked in different types of environments, and some of those environments may not have necessarily been the most inclusive of environments when it comes to like how you show up and how you behave, or the type of customers you may have coming in. So I kind of want to get your opinion on that, of like what you felt about that.
You know, it's really interesting, because there's a company that you and I worked for, not the first one that we worked together at, but there was a company that you and I both worked for. And I was about to put my other friend out there, but I feel like if I said her name, everybody would know what company it is. Everybody's gonna know what company it is. So we worked for this retailer, which is a retailer that specializes in a particular type of product. And for me, that was one of the first times that I'd experienced racism, and I won't even say racism. It was definitely discrimination and prejudice to a field that I'd never experienced before. Showing up Black, showing up queer, showing up outspoken, and also being someone who's big on advocacy. Because, you know, I'm always like, somebody's got to ride or die for the underdog. And it's usually me. Like, I get in trouble for that a lot at jobs, but I'm like, I consider myself pretty diplomatic and strategic when it comes to like my word choice. Until we start picking on people, we start picking on underserved communities and things like that. So in that job, there was a moment in time where I was responsible for hiring for one of the locations, and I interviewed all these candidates, and I found some great people, and I was looking to build a diverse team for this store that did not have a diverse team. And I brought in some Hispanic options and some Black options, and of course some white options as well, because it's a pretty white market. But I would remember being told, and this is actually what led to me leaving that company, I remember being told that at this location in particular, they wanted it to reflect the larger university that was nearby. And I was like, so what are you saying? And he was like, well, you know, my district manager at the time was like, well, don't you know that, like, you know, 60% of their students pledge fraternities and sororities? I was like, okay, that's awesome. You know, I pledged fraternity, so that's awesome. I love that. He was like, but, you know, they're like, I really want us to bring that kind of crowd in here. So we need to, like, hire that kind
A
of people.
college
Some of
crowd?
those,
I would have
some of the,
been picking.
and so that's how I was. I was like, okay, yeah, like I'm definitely looking at college students, people a little bit younger. And he was like, no, there's like a lot of like really pretty like sorority girls. And then like, he started calling out some of the organizations. And I'm like, oh, so what you're telling me
Right. It wasn't no Delta
is that
Sigma
you want me to
Theta. No.
focus on, no, you want me to focus on hiring some white sorority girls. I'm like, am I understanding that correctly? He was
Right.
like, I mean, I wouldn't have said it that way, but yeah, like
But you
that's what
did though.
you did. You did. And honestly, like I walked away that day and I reflected on it and I talked to my mom about it and I talked to a mentor about it and I talked to a friend about it and it bothered me. It
Mhm.
bothered me because the statements that had been used to describe Black people were like rough resume. Their background's a little shaky.
You know what I'm not
The
a fan
word
of? Urban. It feels like a cuss
urban.
word.
It definitely feels like a cuss word because
It feels like you
it's
want to call
low.
me the N word.
It
I don't
always
know.
feels like code name Black.
Yes.
Like, how can I say Black without saying
Urban.
Black?
Like, what does that even mean?
Say
Where
Black
did that
without
even
saying, well,
come
for the
from?
urban community, for the urban crowd. And that company was big on that. That company was big on saying urban and urban crowd and urban attire and stuff like that. And it's like, we just call it streetwear, right? Like you can just
Yeah.
say streetwear and it doesn't have to be anything more than that. But then no, it had to be the urban. We're trying to get our urban demographic. Okay. So I just remember having this conversation with him the next day after he'd said what he said. And I asked him, I said, are you familiar with the term microaggression? And he was like, no, I can't say that I am. And I was like, I had a feeling you might say that. So if you're open to it, I would like to use this as an opportunity to share with you what a microaggression is and how I experienced them working for this company. Because for me, I'd experienced many times having higher ups say, oh, he's so well spoken. Oh, he's so
Yeah. Oh my
polished.
gosh.
Oh, I just love the way he interacts with people. What did you think I was gonna come up in here and yell, what up, my niggas? Is that what you thought I was gonna do? Like,
Right.
is that what we thought was happening here? Like, you thought I was gonna come in and it was
You
gonna
thought
be
I
my
didn't know
ringtone was
English?
bitches
I'm
ain't shit but
sorry.
hoes and tricks? Like, is that what we thought was
And
about
even
to
if it
happen?
was, like, you think my phone isn't going to be in silent?
That's my thing. Like, and I think it was just it was frustrating because even when he made the comment about this particular candidate's background being rough, her resume being rough,
Mm-hmm.
it was because she'd worked in food. I said, well, you do know I worked in food, right? Like my background
Right.
is food. And he was like, oh, but you're different. You're not the same kind of, it wasn't the same kind of
It's then the
experience as hers.
tokenism comes
Because
in.
hers was a little bit more like fast food. And as you know, mine was a little more like casual dining.
Restaurant, yeah.
So it was just really, for me, like that's been how I've experienced racism as a manager. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, as just an employee in a company, I work for a company that is definitely on the bougier side. And so I deal with a lot of like people who got some coin and who have some entitlement and privilege to match it.
Yeah.
And their white privilege is always showing because you can see people be like, oh, you couldn't possibly help me. I need to speak with the manager. And I'm like, I am the manager.
Yeah.
Like there have been many times I've had to be like, but I am the manager. Like,
Right. Like, how can I help you?
That's been like, for me, it has been one of those things where because I was raised to have a good understanding of who I am. And even now at this age and having matured,
Yeah.
certain things don't bother me the way that they did. I just kind of nipped them in the bud. Like there's certain games I just don't play. And I will be real nice and nasty with you in a heartbeat to let you know, no ma'am, no sir.
And I think that's
so.
why like activism is so important. And it's kind of crazy because right in the space that we're in right now with our generation and like with Gen Z and all that, just as a culture where we are, it's kind of polarizing. It's been, and I feel like it was also that way back then, where it's like there was always something polarizing about whatever we were doing, and the people who don't want us to progress always harp on whatever that is, like whether it be the Dr. King versus Malcolm X to be nonviolent or violent, whether it be W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington to conform or to not conform, or whether it be like now where you have people who they feel like because of where we are that racism isn't still happening or systemic racism is not a thing. Right. And so they don't feel like, or they feel like, oh, protesting isn't going to do anything. But there's never that bigger conversation of like, okay, so what are you, give us an idea. Like, you're telling us what we are doing isn't going to work, but you're not bringing any type of ideas. You're not participating. So we don't really value your opinion or idea. You're just kind of like, or you have like people now, you would see before, you can look at artists from like 50s, 60s, 70s, and it's usually going to say like singer, activist. You know what I'm saying? Actress, activist, or you know what I'm saying? Whereas now a lot of the entertainers feel so far removed once they'll be like, oh, I can't relate to that. Or they feel like it ain't for them. They don't relate to that. But then you see stuff like where A$AP Rocky got arrested and he was faced with the reality of like, sir, you're still black to these people.
You're still black.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas before he was acting like, oh, I can't relate. I don't go through that. Me and my people get money. And it's like, you and your people may be getting money, but you don't even realize that you're experiencing it, but you're so happy with what you have because you come from nothing that you just cool with what you got. Not even realizing that your counterpart over here who don't look like you is doing better or getting more. You're not even seeing it. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that I've been noticing. It's so crazy to me how like with millennials, I see this push of people waking up, but then there's also the push back of like, nothing's really happening. Things are better now. We're good now. And it's like, it's such a weird space to be in because while what they have fought for on the surface looks, you know, we have more access to, and we can speak out more. We have a voice now because of social media and things like that. But at the same time, they've also found other ways to silence us. We discussed in the previous episode about how entertainment in the 90s, it was popping and black people was doing their thing, but then you had these laws and stuff that were being passed and you didn't have anybody fight. Well, I'm not going to say anybody, but a lot of people weren't speaking out or using their voice to speak out because they was just so happy that like, we in here now. We made it. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy to even think about.
It's wild because like you said, like in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, there were so many artists / activists. There were so many. And now it seems like that's almost relegated specifically to conscious musicians and neo soul.
Yes. Like, and they call it conscience. Like, like the fact that it's even got a whole, you know what I'm
it's
saying?
A whole thing.
It's a whole, and it has a look now.
It does. It's got locked hair. Probably smells like patchouli or knock jumpa. And that's just, you know, it might have a little facial hair if it's masculine, or if it's masculine presenting, it's probably gonna have a t-shirt with a fist on it or an ankh around the neck. I mean, like, it's interesting. And I think, you know, we can't talk about activism and not talk about like in our modern era, what we've experienced in the past few years. We've had people like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole and Keke Palmer and Killer Mike and Jennifer Lewis getting out there, getting people to vote, getting people to peacefully protest, trying to, like, I remember, and I'm sure it was a viral video, so I'm sure you probably saw it, the video where Keke Palmer got in between protesters and the police, and they had a conversation.
Yes.
And they had, like, literally, like, okay, well, let's all get on a knee together and have this conversation. And I love that that's how they were able to get on the same page.
And it was crazy because people was in the comments complaining.
But this is the thing we've got to realize.
I think it's a highlight on it now because there's social media, but I feel like it was those people back then. Because I always think about the Boondocks episode where like they went and they were supposed to be doing like, I don't know if they was doing like a sit-in or something or protesting or something like that. But like granddad showed up with a raincoat on. And so all the protesters was like eating him up. Like, why would you come? But he like, y'all knew they was bringing water hoses. Like, why you don't have one?
Exactly. There's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be people who have a problem. Like, there's always going to be people who have a problem. And it's just interesting because I even think about there are people who've come through and they've been demonized because of their activism. Like, absolutely demonized. I can't help but think about Angela Davis and Asana Shakur. Like, I can't help but think about this. I can't help but think about Bob Marley. You know, I can't help but think about how they were demonized and villainized on a major scale because they had things that they wanted to fight for. They had things that that were important to them that maybe just didn't match the status quo or didn't match what we feel like we should be talking about. That's
Yeah.
what you should be talking about. And there's so many names that we should be calling out more that we don't even think about. James Baldwin, and how for his time, he was ahead of the curve. Like he was so ahead of the curve because again, this is another openly gay black man who is considered one of the most intellectual minds of his time. Right. I mean, a phenomenal writer,
Hmm.
phenomenal, writing books about same-sex relationships, writing books
Yeah.
with black female pregnant teenage leads. I mean, if Bill Street could talk, hello, this man
Yes.
was ahead of the curve. And again, he too was demonized and villainized for as intelligent and eloquently spoken as he was. Like,
Yeah.
it was just again another, like, no matter how many times or how we present ourselves or how we press the shirt or how nice the tie is done or how cute the suit is, how really wonderfully you puffed your afro, it's never going to be enough because there's going to be not just naysayers from the outside, but the community within, the community that you're representing, the community that you're defending. You're going to have
Hmm.
so many naysayers, and they're going to be loud. They're going to be so
Yeah.
loud. Like,
And
I think
even
about
if you
like,
think, oh, somebody go
oh no,
ahead.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, even if you think about, and that's another thing too. I need y'all to educate yourself. This new thing of like, get you a Coretta. I need people to understand what they are saying when they're saying get you a Coretta.
Hmm.
Because Coretta Scott King was not a Stepford wife. She wasn't
At
sitting at
all,
home baking cookies.
at
Okay.
all.
And I think what people are missing is that, for one, she was highly educated. A lot of those black women back then that were married to leaders were educated women and were educators. They were
Mm-hmm.
working as professors or teachers. They were already a part of this movement. How you think these people are coming together? They not looking for somebody that's just gonna bake a little cookie and just hand out
Mm-hmm.
cookies at the protest.
Mm-hmm.
No, they
Nope.
looking for people that's on the front line that understand what we're fighting for. Coretta Scott King, I believe her sister was the first black person at Antioch when they were integrating that college, and she came in after. She was her sister, her older sister. I think her name was Edith, but don't quote me. Don't quote me. But her sister was the I don't remember if it was the first black person or first black woman, but they were integrated in Antioch, and she went there, and she was one of the first black people to go there. And Coretta Scott King ended up going after her, but like she wanted to be a singer, but she understood also what black people were fighting for in that moment, and
Mm-hmm.
she chose to put her own dreams and goals that she'd had since a child to the side, not for Martin, not for Dr. Martin, let me put some respect on his name, not for him, but because she understood what it meant to liberate our people. She knew what she was fighting for. She was a part of the NAACP when she was in school. She
Mm-hmm.
was already, her family, even her father being a black business owner and having to deal with, he owned like a sawmill or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And because he wouldn't sell to white people, they burned it down. Like, she understood what that experience is. Or you see somebody like Betty Shabazz, who went from Detroit and then went to school in Tuskegee, Alabama for the first time, and she saw firsthand, like, oh,
Period. Culture shock.
this. And I
Now
can
we'll talk about
relate to
culture
that.
shock.
Coming from Milwaukee to Mississippi, people, when I tell you, going from the north to the south is like going from microaggression to just aggression. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing micro about it. You're
Mm-hmm.
gonna know that you're not wanted and they ain't feeling it. You gonna
Yep.
know. It's
You're
not
gonna
gonna be
know.
no question. You're not gonna have to be like, was this shade? Was this? You're gonna
Mm-hmm.
know. It's gonna be very blatant. And so it's like when people are saying, get you a Coretta, y'all ain't even Martin's fighting for y'all not fighting for your people. You're not using your voice to do anything.
Did you hear her,
Nothing.
Jonathan? Did you hear her, Jonathan?
Nothing. Like, what are you
Did you
using
hear
your
her?
voice for? Do you even understand the type of woman that is?
Come on now.
People don't even understand that Dr. King, his dad didn't even want him to marry her at first. They was the feeling. She was a part of the women's movement. She supported
Very vocal,
LGBTQ. She was an
very
advocate.
outspoken. She was an
And some of
advocate.
y'all
Mm-hmm.
ain't even that, but y'all want a Coretta.
Come on now.
Like, let's be for real. Like, put some respect on her name. Because she was
Straight
not
facts.
just some prop. She was not
She
just somebody
wasn't.
that was just standing by cheering on the sidelines.
Mm-mm.
She was on the front lines.
She was very active in the civil rights movement, like very active,
Yes.
like just as many marches, just as many meetings, just as many conversations, maybe not as many speeches publicly as we would think, like, like that Martin did. Maybe not as, or Dr. King,
Yeah.
Reverend Brother Dr. King.
That's why I was like, let me put
Cause
some respect on his name.
that is my fraternity brother. So I can call him a little Reverend Brother, Reverend Brother Doctor, as we call him. But I think it's important, like, it's important to look at like you said, the full picture of who people are, because
Mm-hmm.
like I read or I listened, because y'all know I'm an Audible fan. I listened to Coretta Scott King's her autobiography, her memoir.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful storytelling, because she did
See, you
actually
could have been
go and
correcting me because I feel like I said some stuff wrong.
I think you were no, I think you were right on track, because the thing about it is she did go to school for music. She graduated
Yeah.
and got her degree in music. That's what she was going to do. And she still used her music throughout the
Mm-hmm.
civil rights music. People
Yep.
don't know how much singing she was doing. And you got to think about it. If you look at the movie Selma,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. King was like, he was known to call Mahalia Jackson to sing to him when he was in a low space because of the type of voice that she had. Coretta was an opera singer,
Period.
and she sang a lot. Like, they sang at home all the time. There was a lot of this little light of mine, honey. We finna brighten this light, because
Yes.
you have to think about how volatile it was to be with considered one of the most dangerous men in America at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were having
And
things thrown in
understand
their
the type
homes
of
that went
woman that
kaboom.
would have to be able to be with
Come on
that man.
now, to
Not
be
just
with that
any
man
old
and then survive him.
listen.
And same
And
with Betty
carry on
Shabazz,
his legacy.
and then survive him, and like you said, carry on his legacy and raise his children,
Period. Because Betty
and then
Shabazz raised 6
continue to be the mouthpiece of the movement. Because in both cases, when those legendary prominent leaders were assassinated, because those were calculated assassinations
Mm-hmm.
by the government, allegedly, but we know it's not
Allegedly.
allegedly. But we know it's not allegedly. There's more information out now that we know it's not. But okay, not even there. Um, So when you look at them, they both not only had that charge that had to be carried out after the passings of their husbands, but they did. They carried
Exactly.
them out. They raised those children. They were mouthpieces for the movement. They were behind the scenes approvers of the movement after their husbands were killed.
Yep.
We need to talk to Coretta about this. We need to talk to Betty about this. This needs to come up. This needs to be another conversation. This needs to be another thing. So it's really interesting. Like, I'm glad you brought that up, because there is this whole idea of marrying you a Coretta, marrying you a Michelle Obama. Do you not realize,
Did y'all
people?
see what Michelle Obama was doing while
Come
her
on
husband
now.
was in office? She wasn't just looking cute. She
No.
was out here in these streets.
Her own platform, her own
Yes.
areas of importance. And this is if you were to ask Barack, he would tell you she was the better lawyer. She trained
Period.
him. She was his boss. Keep in mind, she also practiced law longer than him.
And
She
people
helped
be
push him
missing the
along
fact that,
all of
like,
his elections.
exactly. And it's like people miss the fact that, like, we live in a patriarchy, and especially back then before women's rights, of course they're not going to prop the women up publicly. The men are going to be the face of it, because that's going to be what's more accepted socially. But the women were right there on the front. Even if you think about if you pay attention to the Black Panthers, like, of course a lot of people think of the imagery of, like, seeing the men and the guns, blah, blah, blah. But there were women. Afeni Shakur, she was their lawyer on her own. Okay? And she didn't go to nobody's law school. She defended them on her own and won. Like, put some respect on her name, please. Like, I need y'all to understand that, like, all of this, and I think now, because we have these gender wars going on, which is ridiculous to me, I don't understand why Black people do it in particular, because it's like, if you look at your history, we didn't have a choice but to fight side by side. We didn't have a choice, because we're fighting for everybody. And it's like, I'm sure that, like, back then there were probably people who got their success and was like, I'm finna keep it safe over here. I got my little job. I'm just finna play it cool. So it's like, I get that there were probably people then, they just, obviously, they're not going to be spoke about because they wasn't there. But it's like, people have to understand that gender, when it comes to us as people, gender is the least of our concerns. It's not even a concern, because at the end of the day, they don't care. You're still Black.
You're still Black.
You're still going to be Black.
You're going to be Black
period.
first.
At the
Every
end
time.
of it all. And it's like, I don't understand how people don't get that or see that, or how people don't do their own due diligence of research of your own history to even know the people that were. Shaka Khan was a Black Panther. Like,
come
what
on
we
now.
saying?
Come on
what
now.
What we saying?
I think it's really interesting that you brought that up because I wanted to give a little timeline. I don't think people really understand when we talk about Black activism, we're not just talking about the 60s. You know, we're not just
Right.
talking about what happened with civil rights because literally Black people have been involved with activism since the beginning.
Since we
So
got
since we got here, countries established 1776, we're a whole thing. Woo, go America. And then we get to this point where finally the conversations surrounding slavery are happening.
Mm-hmm.
That was the abolitionist movement, for those who don't know. An abolitionist movement was about the abolishing of slavery, which led to the
Exactly.
13th Amendment, of course. But that was a whole movement that required its own group of activists. Yes, there were white ones. I'm not going to act like we did not have
Right. There were
accomplices along that
allies.
journey. There
Yeah.
were definitely allies and accomplices that were white. They were definitely there. But this was a movement that, because of the Black people involved, and there's two I really want to highlight from abolition. There were so many. Frederick Douglass is involved in that. And there's
Yes.
so many. But the two that I really want to shout out specifically are Black women. And I think it's important because their impact, you just can't look over their impact and their continued impact after the fact. Harriet Tubman is by far one of the
Period.
most influential activists of all time. I don't care what
Oh,
anyone says. We're always going to talk about MLK. We're always going to talk about Malcolm X. We're always going to talk about Rosa. But we can't not talk about Harriet Tubman. We
you can't
can't
even
not
talk
bring
about
her
them
up
without Harriet
bringing
Tubman.
up her. Because without the Underground Railroad, without the fight, without the fight and the drive that this woman had to sneak in and out repeatedly, numerous, I
Mhm.
mean, hundreds of trips from the north to the south. I mean, from the south to the north to the north to the south to the back and forth, rescuing people, bringing people to freedom, literally to freedom, like literally bringing them to freedom. That's what she was doing, and she was risking her life every single time,
You know how
every
bold you
single
gotta
time,
be to make it up north and come back?
and do it
Like,
again,
and
over
do
and
it
over.
again?
I mean, and she had to know what she had to know her path. And this is what we talked about in the previous episode. I remember like I had this word come to me. It was like a download, and it was like, when you know your path, when you are in your path, in your lane, minding your
Mhm.
business, the things that you accomplish look completely different than when you're trying to mind everybody else's business. Sometimes we have to just really align ourselves with what it is we've been put here to do. And Harriet Tubman is a great example of someone who aligned themselves with the calling that was put on their life. And because of it, she was able to make a difference for all of us colored
Yes.
folk, you know? And the other one I want to bring up that I don't think ever gets enough talk, ever gets enough conversation, ever gets enough spotlight on her is Sojourner Truth. Not enough people talk
Yes.
about the impact this woman had, not just on abolition, because she was huge when it came to abolition.
Yeah.
And she was one of those figures like Harriet Tubman. They scared people.
Okay.
She was tall. Like Sojourner Truth was tall. She was an Amazon. And she would get up on that stage and she would, whether it were poems or speeches or whatever she had to do to let people know why the importance
Mhm.
of abolition, she would. But it's important to bring her up because for the women who tune into our show, suffrage was the next step of activism for Black people.
Yeah.
With suffrage, which was the women's right to vote, women would not have gotten their right to vote without the Black women that got involved.
Period.
You know, we talk about the Susan B. Anthony's and there's a Claire lady, I can't remember her name right now, but we talk about those ladies
Medgar
all the time.
Evers' wife. People
All the
don't speak
time.
on her.
People don't.
Enough.
But like women would not have the right to vote without women like Sojourner Truth joining that charge, without,
Mhm.
Harriet Tubman and so many Black women. Because again, they fought for the right to vote, but the right to vote came for all women. It didn't just come for white women when it came. It came for all women. And it's crazy because as soon as the right to vote became a thing for women, white women immediately were like, okay, thanks, Black ladies.
Literally. They're like, okay, thanks, bye.
We're done. Appreciate that.
Thanks for the numbers.
Right. Deuces. See you on the other side. But it's wild because after suffrage, so we go abolition, we go suffrage. You know, we have the whole era that was after that. It got real rough for the country. We had two world wars, the Great Depression, honey. Jim Crow became established in the South, and then we start leading into the big monster, the behemoth that was the Civil Rights Movement. And people always talk about Rosa Parks, which there's no denying Rosa Parks' impact. I've been making this joke at work all week, and I don't think it's tasteless, but I'm also blackity black, so I'm gonna say it.
You
And I'm
can
always
say.
like, white people will say stuff to me, and I'll be like, in the words of Rosa Parks, no, and I walk
Period.
off like
I need
all the
to start
time,
using that.
all, all the time. I just be like, no, it's Black History Month, and I don't have to do it.
No.
But I love throwing that Rosa Parks quote out there. But I think that so many people know about Rosa Parks that they don't realize Rosa Parks was really just the most famous person to say no, the most
Yeah.
famous woman to refuse to give up her seat.
Yeah.
Before
I don't
her,
think
in
she
the
was the
same,
first though. Wasn't
she
it
was
somebody?
definitely not the first.
Yeah.
There were 3 women before her within like a few years' time. 4 years before her, there was a woman named Lily Mae Bradford here in Alabama.
Yeah. Come on,
She
Miss
might have been
Bradford.
we
Come on,
might be
cousin.
might be a cousin. You know, we might have there might be some bloodline. You know, might be some connection.
Yes.
But 4 years prior, she said no, and she was arrested. So then that same year, 8 months prior, no, at the beginning of the year, there was a 15-year-old, Claudette Colvin. She's she's the second most famous woman to have said no and refused her seat. She's 15 years old, arrested.
I didn't know she was 15.
15. The next one, 8 months before Rosa, was Aurelia Browder. Another woman, arrested. She said no. Rosa Parks was in December of 1955. There had been at least 3 women prior to her, at least, who had all been arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of conversation, and we've talked about it before, and I'm not my goal here is not to put any shade on Rosa Parks' legacy, because that is a phenomenal legacy. Because not only
it was needed, it was all needed.
It was very needed. And because of Rosa, the Montgomery bus boycott became a thing, and Martin Luther King got involved in the movement, and civil rights movement happened the way that it did. So it really sparked the shift in civil rights. But we also have to look at some things that were very prevalent in our country and in our community at the time. And colorism is still a thing that gets us. It's still a thing that catches us up. And it was a thing that caught us up then. Rosa Parks was light skinned as compared to some of those other women. And so her being of lighter complexion made it a little bit easier, the optics. Again, we're back at that word, optics.
Yeah.
People had been saying no, been refusing to give up their seat. But Rosa in particular was this woman, a seamstress who had worked hard, and she said no. And I think for some of them, they saw this is a great photo opportunity for us to go ahead and jump on this thing. You know, I don't see how we couldn't do it. Dr. King, I don't see how we can't do it now. You know, and it just kind of, it's still one of those things that you look at, and when we tell our story, we have to tell the whole story. You know, we have to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's an aspect of the story that's a little ugly. But that's important because the Civil Rights Act led to the Voting Rights Act. So now we're no longer being hassled at the polls. We're no longer being given wrong directions. We're no longer being given literacy tests to vote. We're no longer be giving and even voting in sundown towns was like a thing. Like it would be difficult because they would give you the hardest, you'd have to go the furthest to vote, knowing the sun's going to go down while you're there or on your way there or on your way back. And it's just, there were so many things.
In itself.
Like sometimes just reading, and it's, I get it. I'm going to say something very unpopular and controversial right now, and I'm just prefacing it with that little disclaimer. I get why there are white people who don't want us to talk about Black history. Because when you start talking about the true ugliness that is our history, you start really looking with a side eye at everybody and everything that has happened in the past 400 years in this country. Everything comes into question.
And then you side-eye the people who refuse to acknowledge their privilege or act like these things are not happening. Oh, it's over. These things aren't happening anymore. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Everybody's free now.
Of course, Bob. You would say that, Bob. And it just, it's frustrating, but it's also one of those things that I think we still have opportunity here to continue to be activists and to continue to do, activism in this modern way. And voting equity and civil rights also led us to what would be a big movement during the 80s and 90s. And that was conversations around the LGBTQ community, as well as the HIV/AIDS crisis. And we start seeing people who had never gotten a spotlight for activism getting spotlights. Again, James Baldwin being a major voice as an AIDS advocate and someone who was an advocate for LGBTQ rights. And keep in mind, In the 70s and 80s, it was illegal to be anything other than straight.
Period.
It was illegal. Just like it was illegal to marry someone of a different race, it was illegal to be in relationship with anyone of the same sex. It was illegal. They would kill people and arrest them over this and charge them.
Yep.
Mind blowing. And we also had, the rise of more, like, of course, drag became more of a thing in the 80s and early 90s, but like we also started having these major powerhouses like Marsha P. Johnson, phenomenal queen, who helped initiate and inspire and catalyze the Stonewall incident.
Yes.
And those, like, I look at moments like that are crazy, like the riots and the incidents, and I don't look at them like, yay, we did that, but I also do look at them like, yay, we did that. Like, these are moments where we got fed up enough that enough was enough, and we had to let y'all know y'all not gonna come up here and run nothing.
Absolutely.
We've had enough.
And I think too, like, I think they kind of evolved how activism was going on too, because you saw people who were getting opportunities in entertainment using their entertainment to send out a message, whether it be a coded message or just an outright message. You know what I'm saying? And even if you think like in the 90s, like, I don't know how much you watched Martin, but he would always wear like black college sweatshirts and stuff like that. He always had black artists and stuff like that. Yeah, like they started to kind of evolve the way that they were doing it to fit wherever they were. And I really appreciate that. And I even think now with social media, we've used it. While it's a gift and a curse, it's able to give us a voice. I remember being in college when the Trayvon Martin thing happened.
Yes.
And millennials were like, absolutely not. I mean, complete uproar.
Over it.
And it was so good to see, though, because it was like, it just was a reminder of like, okay, we haven't strayed too far. And when it's time to come together, we are going to come together.
We still do.
And even to see our generation, I'm like, okay, we care, we're aware, we're paying attention. Like it was beautiful to see everybody coming together. It was beautiful to see everybody protesting together and really standing together and having a unified voice together. I hate that it takes injustices to do it because it should be a consistent thing. But I think with the way I feel like even with the rise we talked about the rise of entertainment in the 90s, I feel like there was a moment where people felt like, oh, like we did it. I think people got comfortable because they started seeing so many black faces. It was like, oh, we did it. And it's like, we did, but we didn't because they just found another way.
They found another way.
You know what I'm saying? They'll always find another way.
They changed their strategy. That's all it was. And it's like just as many times as they change their strategy, we have to change ours. It's
Absolutely.
Literally that. Like, and I don't think
complacent.
We can't get complacent. We can't get comfortable. There's no room for comfort anymore. Like we've never honestly had room to get comfortable. So what's missing? We're not missing anything. We've never been comfortable here. Because we don't belong here. So it's like now that we're here, our legacies are here, our ancestry is here. We have to make this work for us, and not just work for us, but let's make it something that it's never been. Which is why I'm like excited about the modern face of activism in some cases. Now there's some cases where it's just bothers me, gets my nerves, makes my head hurt. And that's me just getting older. But there are people like, which, we're now in this current phase of activism, where we're talking about things like police and prison reform, which they've been doing prison and police reform for a long time, but we're honestly having more conversations in a way that I think we might start to see some type of impact because of how many people are getting behind it. Now, again, we're talking good old boys club and old boys rules. So we're really fighting an uphill battle here, but it doesn't mean we're not fighting. It doesn't mean we can't win. Because if you've ever been on a stationary bike, when it starts going uphill, you have to find that, you got to find that reserve energy and you got to push. And once you get to the top of the hill, guess what you do? You come down the hill and it's a lot easier.
Yes. Your legs be like, whoo.
I think about the inspiring story of Bree Newsom. I don't know if you're familiar with Bree Newsom, but
somewhat.
She went into infamy, if you will, white infamy, black fame, when she was protesting in South Carolina over the fact that there was still a Confederate flag at the State House. And they're protesting. And I actually listened to an interview. Jamel Hill interviewed her. And hearing the interview, it was phenomenal to hear this young woman just talk. because she said, I knew it. Like, we were talking about it. We'd had this idea that somebody needed to climb the flagpole. Somebody needed to climb the flagpole and rip down that Confederate flag. And she was the one to do it. And they voted on her because originally I think it was going to be a white man they were going to have do it, because they were like, well, it's less likely that they're going to shoot him. You know, like,
Listen.
he's more likely to survive the incident. You know, they were considering that, like, okay, you know, and I think they had actually picked somebody else, but in the heat of the moment, in the way that things played out, it became her calling to be the one to climb that flagpole. And again, it catapulted her into Black fame for me, because she ripped it down. She spent some time a little time, I think, in jail, because I think they got her for some type of being on federal property, doing something crazy, some type of bogus charge, but I think was eventually dropped. But because of that level of protest, that level of what some might call radical, which was not really that radical, but that level of radicalism, they no longer have a Confederate flag at the State House in South Carolina.
Speaking of Confederate flags and radicalism, I don't know if you remember what went down at Stone Mountain Park here in Georgia.
I remember hearing about it.
I was working there at the time. I had to go to, and I remember, so before because we basically knew that there was going to be a protest, there was going to be things going on. And they told us, like, my manager was like, listen, if y'all don't feel comfortable and y'all don't feel safe, I can't make you come. But when I tell you, just see, like, the level that I saw of people literally riding through with their Confederate flags with all of these expletives written on the sides of their stuff. And it was one of those moments for me where it's like, it's a reminder that while on the surface, it may look like we've gone so far, there is still so far to go.
There's so far to go.
Because the only thing that it's done is put those people in hiding. You saw it when we had the Cheeto for a president. Those people came out of hiding. They were loud. They were proud. They had their flags out. They were doing it. They were excited. They were harassing people. And then as soon as they ate up all the Cheetos, it wasn't no more Cheetos, they went back radio silent. So it's like, it's not like we've necessarily evolved. And I wonder how some people even feel like at that time I remember when he got elected, and there was like Wahite women coming into my job and trying to make it, I guess they was trying to like save face because they was talking to this little Black girl. And for me, I'm like, I would rather y'all not even bring, like, don't try to tell me that you're on my side. Like, don't even bring it up. Because at the end of the day, when I see you, I see your husband. And I know, and I also know the percentages of who voted for what.
But come on now, like, percentages, talk about it.
Don't even bring it to me.
Because majority white women and majority white men are putting him in the White House. And there were so many white women who were expected to vote differently that voted for that man under the cover of, the ballots are private. Nobody has to know.
And their issue with him wasn't even about us. It was about women's rights and how he treated women. That was what they were upset about. And it's like, you're not even, my thing is like, I'm thinking because I'm Black, then I'm a woman. But it's like, you only care because you see the type of rhetoric he's done towards women, the type of things he's been accused of. That's what you're affected about. You're not finna get me again like you did them with women's rights and try to use me to be on your side.
But I mean, that's literally what it is.
At the end of the day, you're going to leave me hanging. Can't fool me, sister.
This is the crazy thing about it. I'm so glad you said that, because literally any movement that has come, they've almost always tried to get Black women first, because the Black women are almost always the heartbeat of any and every movement that they're involved in. And as soon as Black women get involved, help get that movement where it needs to go, a little dropped. You're no longer a priority. We decided to go in a different direction.
Right.
Of course you did. You were originally going in a different direction anyway. So it's like, it bothers me because we're at the face of another movement right now. So there's a woman, and I've done a little research on her, and I'm really excited to continue reading more about her. Christine Michelle Carter. And I really hope it's Michelle and not Michelle or Michael or Mitchell. I don't know, but I think it's her middle name, so we're going to say it's Michelle. Christine Michelle Carter. And she's written numerous articles, and she's been very heavily involved in advocating for working parents, for women's maternal rights, and specifically for maternal health. And she would be the one that those who might have seen the interview with with Vice President Harris, and there was a lady who interviewed her, and they talked about the maternal
black
Black
maternal
maternal
mortality rate.
mortality. Thank you. The Black maternal mortality rate. It's almost a tongue twister.
It
But
is.
this is who I'm talking about, and she's done a lot of work specifically in creating a space for mothers in the workplace, and not just mothers in the workplace, fathers as well, working parents, but also like how are we going to address our issue of the rate at which Black women are dying in the hospital giving birth to their children. How are we going to address that? And I think that that's another big advocacy activism moment that we're having right now, because Black women are dying at the most horrendous rates. Black female mortality rates when it comes to their pregnancies are ridiculous. It's something that like this country really has to get behind. And honestly, if you look at just our ugly history of what they've thought about us this whole time, the experimenting, the things like the Tuskegee experiment, things like the way in which doctors would experiment on black slaves with no anesthesia to see how things worked and how things happened, or the stealing of our bodies and our cells like Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa cells. Like, they've always had a disrespect when it comes to our bodies, but they've always felt that we're stronger, that we can take more pain because they can handle it. They're just dramatic. They're just loud. They're fine.
Yeah.
And it bothers me that there's so many Black mothers who complain about pain, who complain about how they're feeling, who are trying to inform their doctor about their actual pain. So many. I even think about,
and this is a fear for me for sure.
It's a little messy, I guess, if you will. But recently, Dr. Jackie off of Married to Medicine came under a lot of she came under a lot of scrutiny, understandably so, because now we have to question, what have you done your entire career when it comes to Black women? Have you? Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is, because I'm gonna play devil's advocate, but I also don't agree with her. So I feel like what she was trying to say, which was still, in my opinion, wrong, was like people trying to like come in and they'll like lie about symptoms and stuff to get like doctor's notes and stuff like that. But my thing is, first of all, that has nothing to do with race.
Right.
It's like, if you're gonna, people do that. People have fake doctor's notes, all this. That has nothing to do with race.
All the time.
Second of all, if I'm a pregnant woman and I just don't want to go to work today, I should be able to just not go to work today. You know what I'm saying? And it's no disrespect to her. I think once you experience something like that, what your body goes through, how you feel mentally, emotionally, and what you don't have control of, which I'm sure she has knowledge of to an extent because she's an OBGYN. But it's like, when you experience that, sometimes I should be able to be like, I don't feel it today. I'm tired. My feet swole. I'm hurting. I'm mentally not there. I just don't want to go. And that should be okay. And I think people minimize what you go through when you're pregnant. I had to advocate for myself personally in my job to the point where I'm a part of management training now, because I went to HR on my store manager at the restaurant that I worked at, because he had the audacity to try me a few times. Let's be clear. It was an older Wahite man, and he tried me a few times. The first time he tried me, he made a comment about, Asian women, they work in the rice fields when they're pregnant. And I looked him dead in his face and said, I'm not a slave.
Come on now.
I'm not a slave.
Correction.
You think they want to be in the rice field, you idiot? Like, are you kidding me? And then the second time, I was literally in the kitchen, minding my business, getting food for my people. And this was at the time, I literally, when I tell y'all, like, I'm not even joking, like Bible, right hand, I was working circles around these servers. And I was literally bartending, doing to-go host. Like, I'm running circles around these people to the point where, like, it was days where we were so understaffed that the front of the house manager is in the kitchen and I'm the unofficial front of the house manager, just because I have on a red shirt that says I'm a trainer. And people just gonna come to me because my shirt looked different from everybody else's. And it's like, I had literally been commended on how hard I was working and how much they wouldn't have been able to get through that time without me. And then maybe like 2 days later, I kid y'all not, I'm in the kitchen, mind my business. I'm about to walk back out, take some food out. And he stopped me and he was just sitting in the office and he was like, when's your due date? And I told him, and he was like, I'm going to cut your days down. And I was like, no, you're not. And I just walked off. But he didn't understand the calculations that was going on in my head at that moment. Because for me, that was your final try on me. You tried me for the last time. It just so happened, not only was there a manager sitting in there with him. So what I did, me being strategic, when the next shift manager came in that day and I stopped, I put her to the side, I said, how do you think my work has been lately? Do you think my work has gotten bad? Do you think I've been slacking since I've been pregnant? And she was like, no, like we literally haven't been, like we wouldn't have been able to do what we've been able to do if you weren't here. Like you've been doing great. I don't think you switched up at all. And I was like, I'm glad you said that, because he was just saying that he wanted to cut my days and I'm not okay with that. So she gave me, I asked her for like the information for the HR people. So I called the HR lady and I put on my best voice and I milked. I'm like, he said he's going to cut my days and I have a baby on the way and I don't know what I'm going to do and I need the money. Oh, I milked it. Oh, I milked it to the bone. Well, do y'all know I came back to work to an apology? An apology. And kept bare minimum my days and became a part of training, because you can't try pregnant people because they didn't want a lawsuit. You cannot do that. So I think that one of the important things is not only to be an activist, but first step of being an activist is to advocate for yourself. Stand up for yourself. And once you start to stand up for yourself, it'll be so much easier and second nature to stand up for other people. Understand what your rights are. Understand what can and cannot be tolerated. Draw a line, set your boundaries, and stand on it. And at the end of the day, don't operate from a lack mindset, because God is going to protect you either way. If you in the right and you doing right and your heart is in the right place, God gonna make sure you straight. Because I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. They never said, and I milked it back. I started coming to work late. I would come about 15 minutes late. Since you want to try me, and I know you can't fire me now. I used to have me a little chair behind the bar. Like, I'm gonna sit down. I'm going to relax because my feet be hurting. Like, and you're not gonna say anything. I think it's so important, like, that you gave them the full story, because it's, when we do advocate for ourselves, it doesn't always pan out that it works out. But in a situation like that, and even with my situation with that company that I worked with, the way it ended was ultimately I ended up leaving the company a few months later. But before leaving, they created an entire group to educate the company. It was the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And this was a group of peers, you know, managers and employees and people from corporate coming together. And the very first lesson that they gave the whole company was on microaggressions. So you can tell me to my face that you would have fired me if you had the opportunity, but you can also show me without saying a word that you realize you learned something that day that maybe the rest of these racist white people who work in your company could benefit from and not get y'all screwed up, because that could have been a whole different kind of situation if I wanted to take it there. Right. And I think it's perfect because we're going to get ready for our trivia. We have our trivia coming up in just a second, y'all. Yes. So I think it's perfect. We're going to get ready for our trivia, but I think it's just so great, like, that there, as a culture, as a community, so we've always had leaders in activism. And I don't think that's something that's ever going to change, it's ever going to stop, because our activists they just changed the look. We, you know, every new age comes around and we have a new age of activism, honey, and they find the problems and they address them and they bring them to our attention, bring it to the forefront and say, this is unacceptable. And we as a people got to do something about it. And I'm here for every bit of it, because we are an impassioned people. We are people who are lit by fire, who move by the Spirit, and in many cases get shit done that way. Yes. And so I just hope that we continue that legacy, especially as we step into this new age of activism, addressing things like police reform, prison reform, our education system and how lackluster it is, and the issues that even reparations coming up in conversation. I think that's really interesting, because some form of reparations needs to happen for ancestors of slaves. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you know that they're actually in other countries, and I think in the UK they might have done this, but in other countries that they have, they're starting to sign bills into place to pay reparations to ancestors of slaves in their countries? No, I did not know that. It's becoming more of a conversation globally that these colonizers are having to address. There's a city, or it's a state, one of them. I know California's talking about it. California's brought reparations to the table, and as a state has decided they're going to do something about it. But there's a city that that has approved a whole conversation, a whole
structure on how they're going to approach reparations.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people are like, oh, you don't need 40 acres and a mule at this point. It's not about the 40 acres and the mule specifically. It's about the fact that we had people who, our people have endured, and we're still
died
here.
for this land.
Died
they're
for this
buried
land.
underneath.
We fought for this
They're
land
in Lake
too.
Lanier. They've been flooded out for this land.
The Civil War,
and
we were involved. We've been involved in every single war this country's been in and have fought for.
Absolutely. On the front lines.
On the front lines. Without having rights.
Exactly.
Imagine coming home from war and not being able to vote. Have
rights.
Come home from war and being discriminated against and locked up for a loitering law because Jim Crow exists where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just mind-blowing.
And I think what people need to understand, too, when they talk about reparations, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when slavery was abolished, like, that was something that Native Americans did for the slaves that they had, was give them land on their reservations. Like, they gave, it wasn't like, because I think what people need to understand, too, and when you look at, like, places like the Caribbean, and then you look at places like America, when slavery was abolished, we were still here with the people. Nothing changed with their mentality. Nothing changed about how they felt. They didn't leave. It's not a predominantly Black country. You know what I'm saying? We still had to be here with those same people, and we had nothing. So we still had to depend on those people. Some people stayed as slaves because what was they going to do and where was they going to go? They were indentured servants.
Indentured servants, yep. Indentured
servitude. Paid pennies on the dollar.
Or
to do these things.
Exactly.
So it's like, I think people need to understand too, because I seen Tyrese. You know, if you saw him talk about how he want to be Latino because he don't understand why we as a people, as Black people, don't put family first like the Latin community does. And I'm like, and then there were people in the comments agreeing, talking about, yeah, because Black people be on BS and Black people da-da-da-da. And it's like, do you understand where you come from? What you come from? Do you understand that your people were intentionally oppressed and intentionally were not given opportunities? Do you understand that when these people come from other countries, they're able to get business loans and stuff that we can't get just off the strength that we're Black? Like, come on, like, educate yourselves. For him to say something like that during Black History Month.
They just talk. I mean, like, because that's so disheartening. Because literally, if you just look at the legacy of our country, and I promise y'all we're going to get to these trivia questions. It's going to be exciting, and we have a bomb for the culture this episode. But it's like, it's really disheartening because when you look at it, the legacy of our country, it has always been about Black men dying, being brought back to their Black mothers or Black wives for their bodies to be cleaned and presented or displayed for. Because I think about Emmett Till. I think about. I
still can't look at that picture to this day.
You know, like, I've seen it too many times already, and I've maybe only seen it 5 times in my life, and that's way too many times because that actually happened. And for someone to fix their mouth publicly with a platform or not, to fix your mouth publicly and say that you would rather be your Black ass mouth.
Sorry, y'all.
Because you blackity black, buddy. Blackity black, buddy. And you have the nerve to say you would rather be a different race because of how family oriented they are.
Insane.
What?
Insane. How about
Do
you start with your
not
family?
also realize the intentional and strategic dissolution of the Black family that has happened over the past 400 years? I mean, just starting with the Lynch papers and how Oh, I'm mad. Oh, I'm mad. Mass incarceration. Like,
but then people want to talk about, oh, the Black man, but then you gonna sit up here, this Black man
got the nerve to fix your blackity black mouth.
Like they don't have their own issues.
That's how I unfollow you on Spotify right there. I promise you. That's the easiest way for you to come right up my life.
Ignorant thing I've ever heard.
Ignorant foolishness like that.
Black History Month. We was on day 2.
Done. Next topic. Done. I'm so I'm upset. I'm writing a letter to somebody. Somebody is getting a letter. Somebody is getting a letter.
I'm gonna write a letter.
I'm gonna write. That's where I got that from. I'm gonna write a letter. That's exactly where I got that from. So, we've got some trivia, y'all. Dee and I have about 5 questions each, And
Yes.
these are questions about activism, and we're really excited because we're going to ask each other these questions. If you learned something, please get in the comments, get on our socials, get in the Q&A here on Spotify, or I don't know if Apple has a version of that, but maybe they will soon because, everybody be watching each other. So get in the comments, get in the question and answer section, get in the YouTube section. Let us know what you learned, if you learned anything. And if you have trivia questions you want us to ask,
what should we have talked about? Tell us that
yes,
too.
come on, let us know. Engage with us. Talk with us.
Yes.
I think it was really cute seeing y'all to try and guess who that queen was we were talking about in last week's For the Culture. And wrong.
Nobody got it right.
Nobody got it right. But it was so funny. I love that we have the beehive in the comments. So
Yes.
I'm going to start with the first question because I think you started first last week. And so my first question is D. Who wrote, he's a famous author and activist, who wrote The Souls of Black Folk and also started the NAACP?
Who wrote The Souls of... Okay, but it was more than one people that started the NAACP though.
He was the primary founder.
W.E.B. Du Bois was a part of it. And there was a woman too. Because I had let me say her name. Mary White Ovington was a part of it too. It was a few
Mary
people.
White Ovington. Who wrote Souls of Black Folk, though? Because this is one of the founders of NAACP.
Y'all don't take my black card, child.
She literally just said, y'all, it's W.E.B. Du Bois. Like, come on, girl. Come on.
I'm like, but I get
that's why I said the book and the founder. That's why I said the book and the founder, because I'm like, if I say founder... I
wanted to say W.E.B. Du Bois, but then I'm like, but it was more than one person that was a part of that.
Souls of Black Folk is one of his most famous books. That he's written, but yeah, it's definitely W.B. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So technically I got it right, y'all.
You got it right. No, you got it right. You got it right.
Okay,
yeah,
my turn.
Okay, what you got?
Okay, so what was used? It's a specific name. What was used in the South to prevent Black people from voting?
Because my mind immediately goes to literacy tests.
No, it wasn't that. But that's
you're talking about, huh?
I said it wasn't that, but that's a miss.
Was used to keep Black people from voting.
It's a specific, very specific thing.
It's very vague.
That involves
there were a lot of things.
It's very, very specific though.
I know there was a poll tax.
There you go.
That was it, the poll tax?
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, but they're like, what's crazy, y'all, and I really encourage y'all to do the research on this. There were long lists of things that they would do to keep Black people from voting.
They kept coming up with stuff.
They would every time that Black people, you got to be able to write your first and last name. Okay, so all the Black people start learning how to write their name.
Right.
Now you got to pass this. You got to pass this history test. Now you got to pass this. Now you got to pay a tax. You got to come with it was ridiculous. Now we're gonna move your polling place 15 miles down the road, knowing you ain't got no car. It was ridiculous. Okay, next question. What event started the modern civil rights movement in the United States?
What event?
It was a particular event. One thing happened in particular that led to the official start of the
I didn't
civil
know
rights
it was
movement.
just one specific.
It was one specific event. We talked about it in this episode.
The march, or was it Rosa?
It wasn't the march. It was kind of Rosa, so you get half a point. It was the Montgomery bus boycott. Because of Rosa, they did the Montgomery bus boycott, and that's how MLK got involved. And when MLK was involved, that's what led to the initial beginning of
I was between the buses and the March on Washington. I'm like, it was one of them. I don't know.
I think March on Washington was after.
Listen, y'all, don't kill me now. Listen.
No, we're learning together. This is a learning moment for all of us.
It'd be so much information. And you know what it is? Much. It's like, you know how when somebody asks you something and your mind go blank? Like that anxiety of like, I gotta get this right.
I gotta get it right. My black card's on the line.
Completely. It's like now you know nothing after you just said it a whole episode and now you know nothing.
We love it. We love it though.
Okay, so what are the names of the laws that prevented Black people from owning property or holding certain jobs?
Because I'm thinking Jim Crow laws, but it's probably not those. Those were specifically laws about segregation and the treatment of Black people in the South. Laws that kept Black people from holding land
and
or
jobs.
owning
and certain jobs. owning
Um,
property and holding certain jobs. I'll
owning
say it like that.
property in certain jobs. I don't know that one. I probably do once you say it. I'll remember it, but I can't remember that one
They
right
were
now.
the black codes.
They were the black codes, and that's so easy. They were the black codes. Okay. Um, See, I feel like I tried to. Okay. So, who is the leader?
I feel like we should have
Uh,
came up with easier stuff so we could have sounded like we knew what we was.
that's what I feel like. I feel like my questions are a
My
little
next one
too
gonna be
easy,
easy.
and yours are like bopping me upside the head. I'm having to reach back into my Black History flashcards in the back of my head from when I was 8.
Listen, because
Um,
I got the whole pack of like all the black stuff that happened
mhm.
and everything. I come from a parent who was blackity
Oh,
black.
I showed you mine. I still got my little
Yes.
pinwheel and all my books and my encyclopedia. Um,
Yes.
who was the leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and he also played a major. He was a major player in the civil rights movement, and he
I don't know that one.
recently passed.
You think it's somebody I know? What is
John
I ain't gonna
Lewis.
lie, I never heard of SNCC. I've never heard of that.
SNCC. Yeah, SNCC was huge during that time. SNCC and the SCLC were two of the biggest organizations for starting the civil rights movement. SCLC was oh goodness, I can't believe I just decided to
This is what
say the
happens when you go
acronym and
to
could not
PWI,
remember
I
it.
guess.
But MLK was the leader of the SCLC
hmm
and John Lewis was the leader of SNCC.
I've heard of the SCLC, but I've never heard of SNCC. I had
Mm-hmm.
never heard of it. Look, you
Mm-hmm.
learning something new every day. That's my
Yes,
Black
that's what this is
History fact
about.
for the day.
Yes.
Now we have to get off here and do some research.
Come on now.
Okay, so this is gonna be an easy one. What Supreme
Okay.
Court case allowed separate but equal facilities for blacks and whites?
Separate but equal was that was not Brown v. Education. That was unconstitutional. Plessy versus Ferguson.
Yes. Ding,
Yes.
ding,
Yes.
ding.
I had to think about it because I'm like, I actually wrote them down. Those are two very major like legal battles in activism. And so,
Yeah.
like we said, Plessy v. Ferguson was separate but equal. But because of Plessy v. Ferguson, we end up with Brown v. Board of Education, which was like, it's
Yeah.
actually unconstitutional how unequal this is, or unequal these conditions
Yeah.
are in education. So we love winning a major court case. I have another easy one coming for you. So what
You
organization
said
was,
SNCC was gonna be easy, and child, she did not know.
I thought it was going to be easy, but I think I was actually reading this next
Don't
one.
preface it by saying easy
I
because you're
shouldn't,
gonna
but
get that.
I think I know you're going to get this one. Like, I know you're going to get this one. What organization was founded by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale and advocated for self-defense and revolutionary activism?
Say that again.
What organization was founded by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale and activated for self-defense and revolutionary activism? Yes, the Black Panther Party. Yeah, I'm like, now you're going to get that one.
It was a lot of words. You
It's a lot of words. And I was trying to like shorten it. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was reading, I was like, there's a lot of words here. I was doing
But I know who Huey
compound
Newton and
sentences.
Bobby Seale is, so you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what I knew when I said Huey Newton and Bobby
Yeah.
Seale, and then revolutionary activism and self-defense. I was like, okay, this is all going to come together.
Oh yeah.
Okay, what you got?
Okay. I think did you do that one already? No. Okay. So this particular thing occurred to test and break down segregation practices in interstate transportation.
Oh, freedom rides.
Yes. I was trying to think of like how I wanted to word it because I didn't have it actually worded. I just had the actual answer.
The answer, that was good. No, that was good. That was a good one. For those who don't know, the freedom rides were they were these integrated bus rides that had black and white people on it. And typically the black people would be sitting towards the front and the white people towards the back in their unassigned seats. But this is how they would go into really hot areas where they knew that there was a chance of violence against them. So there were really iconic moments where when they knew they were in a town where they were going to be assaulted, the white people would get off the bus first, knowing that they would be the first to get the brunt of the punishment and the violence. And that's very honorable. So
yes,
we thank those allies and accomplices. My final question for you, and I think this is an easy one, but we'll see.
God. Stop saying that.
I can't help it. I tried to, okay, whatever. So here we go. This goes back to us talking about connecting art to activism. Who is the poet and activist who wrote Still I Rise, empowering African Americans to
Maya
overcome
Angelou.
adversity? Okay,
No,
period. It
but
was
Maya
easy.
Angelou. Listen, now the poetry I be knowing.
I know.
She
I
was in
know.
poetry club. You know what I'm saying? She used to write a little piece, a little something,
This
little
was like,
two.
okay, she's going to get this one.
I know, but
Phenomenal
that
woman.
Maya. Yeah. That was it, right?
One more. You got one. Your last
Oh,
one.
okay. I'm gonna give you a different one because my last one is actually about Black Panther, so we kind of have
Okay.
the same thing.
We've already done that. Did I?
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this Black woman, was the first Black female commissioner to the Board of Public Works.
What?
This woman,
I heard what you said. the, the first Black commissioner of the public works. Is this a name that I
Board of
know?
Public Works. It
For the
should be, because she did
child.
more than just that.
Oh, well, see,
She was on the
let's
board
look.
of the NAACP. She was on the board of directors while we were alive.
While we were alive. Is she still alive?
She was married to somebody that was prominent in the civil rights movement.
I'm going to say that this is Coretta Scott King.
This is not correct.
Okay, hang on. I don't know who this is, girl.
This is Merle Evers Williams.
I was about to say Medgar Evers' widow, because I didn't know her first name, and I need to do better. Merle, is that her first name? Is that what you said?
Yes, I hope I said it right. Because, you know, the names back in the day used to be a little different.
Come on now. They had some Theophilus and some Cleophas, and there were some tough ones back then.
So I hope I said it right.
No disrespect to our ancestors. No disrespect to our ancestors and our predecessors.
Yes.
So, of course, we've now come to our favorite segment. We love a For the Culture moment, y'all.
Exodus.
Period.
I don't know why I just felt like...
I'm here for it. You said Exodus? Is that what you said? Okay. Maybe that's a song. Come on, Spirit, speak.
That's a song. It's from a song, but I don't know why that just came over me.
We're here for it.
Go ahead.
This For the Culture is, as y'all know, we started this episode talking about biopics and biopics. And there are two that are about to come out that are really exciting. Like, I think that we're in this era where there's so many stories of prominent and not so well-known Black people, their stories being told. I think about Green Book in the past couple of years with Mahershala Ali, which was phenomenal. Loved that. But we just talked about Rustin, of course, but
Yes.
We've got two really good ones coming out this year that I'm so excited for. One that I know Dee is just like,
yes,
like when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh my God, Dee's gonna lose her shit, like for real.
And it actually fits with what I just said, because I didn't know that that's the one that you were gonna pick to do for the culture. And Exodus is actually, that's
synchronicity.
The song fits.
Synchronicity. There is a Bob Marley biopic coming out February 14th. So during this month, y'all, and there's actually another moment I'm going to add to this.
Episode comes out.
It might actually be the day that this episode comes out.
Which is perfect.
That might be, yes. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. It's the day that this episode comes out. It's called One Love. And it is telling the story of his impact. It's going to be talking about his career and his activism in particular. I know that this is going to be a lot about his activism. So really, really excited to see that. And Dee is a huge Bob Marley fan. Huge Bob Marley fan. We've talked a ton about him over the course of our friendship, but I'm really excited for this to come out. Trailer has also recently dropped of a biopic about Shirley Chisholm, which she has made history in our culture as being, I think, the first Black woman to be elected to Congress. I think that's what happened. She was the first Black woman to be elected to Congress as a member of the House of Representatives, and I think she was also the first Black woman to put in her bid for president. She ran for president. And she is being portrayed by the Queen, Miss Regina King.
Yes. I just love the trajectory her career is. Just...
Love it. I love seeing the things that she directs. I love, like, just how... I mean, you want to talk about acting.
Okay.
Akin. I'm just
All the
really
way
excited to see what she
back
does
from
with
when
this.
she was in there. Y'all ain't got no OD. That's my favorite.
And for me, it's the range. It's the range for me because if you when you watch the trailer for this, y'all will hear that she has nailed Shirley Chisholm's signature voice.
Mm-hmm.
That voice is very distinct, and she has nailed it. Now, there's something I want to add to For the Culture that I forgot about, and I recently saw another trailer, and it's coming out this month. For years, I mean, so many. I feel like 100. For like at least 100.
At
Charlie
least.
Brown has been in syndication.
Yes.
Charlie Brown has been around for a long time, and there is a new feature film in the Charlie Brown universe coming out called, I think it's called Welcome Home. What is the baby's name? I want to call him Franklin, but that might not be his name.
Is his name Franklin? I don't think his name
It might not be Franklin. I got to look it up, y'all. Forgive
the
me.
only lone black boy on Charlie Brown who was sitting on the end of the table in that little rickety lawn chair. I would never get over that. Why y'all do him like that on Thanksgiving?
Is it called Welcome Home, Franklin?
What's his name, Franklin? I think it was.
It is.
I think it was. Franklin. Now that I'm thinking about it.
It is Franklin. It is.
You know why I said no at first?
Yes, memory.
Because I was thinking like, hey, it's Franklin.
Yes, the turtle. The turtle.
So like,
that's why I was like, is it Franklin? I was like, oh
my God, we just nostalgic.
So his name is Franklin, and they are bringing Franklin back because he was originally in the universe, but they're bringing him back for a feature-length film where they're reintroducing him, and he's going to become a mainstay again. And I'm really excited because people are finally, like, there's certain companies that are finally catching on. Like, just a quick conversation about inclusivity. Sesame Street has been doing a great job the past decade on inclusivity. They've talked about people with homing insecurities, and they've had characters like that. They talked about people living with HIV/AIDS. They've had characters like that. They've talked about people who are neurodivergent. They've had characters like that, and puppets that reflect the right neurospiciness. Yes. So it's really exciting that there are certain platforms that are taking notice to the fact that people want themselves to be seen, their kids want to be seen, in all walks of life, whether it's living with a disability or living with brown skin. You know, like we all want to be seen and we all want to be included in the media that we consume. So it's really exciting that here we are, Black History Month. We're about to have this great biopic, I'm sure, about Bob Marley coming out, but we're also about to have the diversifying of Lily White, Charlie Brown universe, and it's exciting.
It is. Let's give a cheer for the blackness of it all.
We love it. So 5011 fam, right? 5011 fam, we just want to thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode, a video episode of the 5011 Chronicles.
Y'all get to see the shenanigan behind it all.
Get used to it. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts as well. And you can also find us on Instagram. And you probably start seeing us in some of these other socials soon. We're on the Facebook.
Soon to be We're on the TikTok. The talks.
Yes, the ticks of the talks. We're going to be in all the places, and you won't be able to avoid us. So you'll be seeing us everywhere, and we'll be seeing you everywhere. So engage with us. Comment, subscribe, like, get involved, get in there, talk to us. Let us know what you want to see, what you want to hear. Ask us questions because we're pretty easy to talk to, So we love you. We love you. We love you. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the 5011 Chronicles.
Bye.